your flesh is never satisfied. It's always going to want more. So if you start doing these classes, your body's going to be like, all right, this is cute. Where's the real stuff? What's up, fam? Welcome back to our channel. My name is Tim. This is my beautiful wife, Pauline, and you're tuning in to another episode of the W Podcast, where you get wisdom in the word with the
Wheeler.
Hey, so we are super excited. We are doing question of the day, but this week we're doing it a little different. We're going to do rapid fire Q&A.
Ooh.
We're doing 4 or 5 different questions that you all have sent us that are kind of short and not really appropriate for a full episode, but we still love y'all, and we want to try to get to as many of these questions as possible. So why don't you jump in and read the first one?
All right, first question. Are single folks supposed to be preparing for the sexual piece of marriage with sex classes? Yoga or nah? What is a sex class? I got a question for y'all. What is a sex class?
Yeah, I never heard of that. That's something different. I would say no.
Well, I mean,
you can work out just to work out and be healthy, but like you, I don't get it.
The purpose of this is like an Olympics where you're training for a marathon.
Yeah, like what type of class could you do to prepare you for? Like, are you doing position? Like, I don't know. I just feel like it gets really weird.
I think another question or another way you could phrase this is like, how do I prepare for, introducing sex into my life when I become married?
I don't think that's what she's saying, but if that's what you want to answer, go ahead.
Yeah, well, okay. So to the actual...
Or he, I'm assuming. I don't know.
To the actual question, there's no... I don't know of any sex classes. I feel like that's extremely dangerous and potentially illegal in some states. I don't see... I mean, obviously, there's a lot of books and there's a lot of videos on the internet that, none of us have been watching. I think that I would just probably ask myself, if I was in your shoes, like, why do I feel like I need to prepare? Because, and this is something that I actually had to ask myself and kind of walk through when we were engaged, was remembering that sex is not a performance. And if you feel like you need to prepare, you need to practice for marriage, then you have the wrong mindset. And I'm not mad at you, because I had it too. And because of the culture that we live in and how highly sexualized everything is, every movie, every book, every piece of media that you've been fed since you were probably way too young. And it takes a long time to renew your mind in a way that reflects Christ and what his intentions are and his heart is, because we've had so many years of just this infiltration of over-sexualized media. But yeah, it's not a performance at all. Honestly, a lot of couples, the first night of sex is the worst night. But it gets better. And it's just thinking about your first time riding a bike was not cute, right? But it was exciting because now you get to ride. You're old enough to ride a bike. You're old enough to get off the training wheels. You're old enough to get off your trike. Whatever the case is, it was a promotion for you. And that's the same way with sex. It's like, you should be excited about this new journey that you're on, and it really is truly a journey. You're excited for the first day of school, for the first day of college, for the first day of your job, whatever those things are, but you didn't know what you're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing when they're at the bottom of the totem pole of anything, and it doesn't matter what your sexual past is like or your experience, because if you are dating in a godly way and you're abstaining from sex, your wedding night will be your first time having sex with that specific partner, and you're under the covenant of marriage. So it's very different in a good way. It's very safe. It's very peaceful, unlike other environments where sex is happening outside of marriage. So I would just get rid of that whole idea of preparing. Obviously, if you have a bridal shower, people will probably get you lingerie and things like that are fun. Obviously, lingerie and toys and all that stuff doesn't make you any better at sex than anyone else. It's just accessories. But yeah, just go into it with a very, very blank slate. One thing that helped me was removing the pressure of the wedding night and realizing this is going to be after one of the longest days of my life, one of the most stressful, exciting, emotional days of my life. And we had a conversation about while we were engaged, like, all right, you know, we can plan to have sex on our wedding night, but it's not a rush. Like, it's not something that has to happen. We literally get to spend the rest of our lives together every single night and go on a honeymoon together. And, you know, there's no rush. If we waited this long, we can continue to wait if necessary. So just remove the pressure off of yourself for the wedding night and for your marriage in general. Sex is never a performance. It's a opportunity to connect with your spouse. And if you kind of go into it with any other heart besides, I want to connect with this person that I love, I want to serve them, I want to be intimate with them, I want to be close with them, it's going to become very unhealthy and unsustainable.
Yeah, one of the reasons why you really want to not do classes like that is because you really do want to protect your heart when it comes to sexual things, because your flesh is never satisfied. It's always going to want more. So if you start doing these classes, your body's going to be like, all right, this is cute. Where's the real stuff? It could just lead you down the path you don't want to be on. So that's something to be mindful of. But this is rapid fire. So let's move on to the next one. Okay. I'll read the next one. Where do I even begin to look for a partner? Question mark. Like, that was it.
Right. Yeah. That's a good question. Where do you begin to look? I think the best place to look is where you are. So what's life looking like for you right now? Who are you connected to right now? Where do you work? Where do you go to church? Who are you seeing on a regular basis? Who knows you? Who do you know? But mostly, who knows you? Who can they recommend?
Don't miss that. Like, that's something that could be huge for you. Like, asking trusted people you know, like, who do you know that'd be a good fit? Like, honestly, the podcast we did like a few months ago with Raph and Karen, that's how she found her husband, her now husband. Like, she told her guy friend, like, all this time I've known you, you never gave me a suggestion. And she said she was kind of joking. She was kind of serious. And, like, that led that guy friend to literally introducing her to her husband.
Right. So, yeah, let people that you are connected to and that you know now, let them know that you're looking. Say, hey, do you have any friends, single friends that you think, you know, I should meet and that I could get to know? And they may think you're joking at first, but that's fine. Be persistent, and they'll eventually catch on that you're very serious about it. You don't need to be like weird about it. Just be like, yeah, like introduce me to some of your friends, or do you have a friend who's like this or like that, or that you think I would get along with? Excuse me. So for girls, you should be asking other guy friends, and for the guys listening, you should be asking other girlfriends that you have asked the opposite sex.
Yeah, and you just ask where to look. Like, you can look anywhere. Like, if your church has a prayer meeting and you see a single... No, seriously, like, if you see a single man at a prayer, especially if it's like a 6 a.m. prayer...
That's true.
Like, that's something to pay attention to. I'm not saying that every man that ever went to 6 a.m. prayer is fully holy, but... You gotta be pretty close if you getting up that early to go to prayer.
At least you're trying.
At least you're trying. So, I mean, that's something to keep your eye out on. And then as you see them, maybe not at 6 a.m., but you see them throughout different prayer or different church services, or you see them maybe in a small group setting or whatever, at least you know, like, all right, this is somebody I should like try to get to know, and by having conversations, not being weird, but just saying, you know, just trying to get to know them a little bit better and making myself known to them.
Right.
All right, next question. Why don't you read it?
What do you all think about getting married while one partner is still in college?
Yeah, very interesting question. Me and Pauline are definitely pro dating in college and like finding your spouse in college, especially for women. Maybe that could be a whole nother episode in and of itself, but it just seems to be a little easier the younger you start, for a lot of different reasons. And I think that definitely could be an episode one day. But the interesting part about this question is while one partner is in college. So to me, I read that as one person is working and one person isn't in college. And I think this all comes down to the dynamics of the relationship. And honestly, like, people may not like hearing this, but low-key gender roles potentially.
Yeah.
Because if it's the man who's still in college and you don't have a job, I just don't see how that makes sense, getting married when obviously God is the provider, but you're supposed to be the provider like for your family. So, if you can't do that, I don't really see how that makes sense. Like when me and Pauline were dating, for the majority of our dating relationship, I actually was in college and she was actually graduated. And I very much so wanted to marry her and be married. But I just did not have the resources to do that in a responsible way. So it didn't make sense. And we had to wait a little longer. But obviously it's worked out in the long run. And I think sometimes you just may have to be a little patient.
Yeah.
When you start dating younger, we're assuming you're young. You could be old and still in college. But we're assuming you're young asking this question. And sometimes you just got to be a little more patient so that you can step into that season appropriately and in the right way. Now, that being said, while your boy was in college wishing that he could be married, I have a friend who's still a good friend to this day who she was married in college. Yeah. And that's how we actually became friends, because I was in class and I saw she had a ring on her finger and I was just confused. I was like, yo, what's like, it was a legit wedding ring. And she looked young. It wasn't like, sometimes you be in class and you could tell somebody 45, like come back to get their degree. Like you can't tell. Now I could tell she was young. And she also had like a Lecrae shirt on. So I was like, are you Christian? Like that was also interesting. Anyway.
Married and in college?
Yeah. So long story short, she was in college and she was married, but her husband was in his 30s or close to it, had a really high...
He wasn't in his 30s.
He wasn't in his 30s.
No. He's like 4 or 5 years older than
He was in his upper 20s.
Mid-20s, yeah.
I think he's a little bit older than that. Anyway, he had a job that paid well where he could provide for his wife. So that's why it just depends. If there's someone who can provide and make sure that the bills are getting paid, then sure. Why not?
And that was a part of their kind of agreement to get married while she was in school, was he was okay with, him being the only one working, and he was in a position where that worked for them. And she, her parents finished paying for school for her, and then, they were off. They also had a very humble wedding. So all that stuff's going to depend on you as well, because if you're the guy, you may say, yeah, I can take care of you and you can move in with me and we'll be good on the day to day. But as far as the wedding, I can't save enough money for us to have the type of wedding you want in 7-8 months. So you have to kind of assess what's most important, because there are a good amount of people out there who the reason why your engagement is so long is because you are saving for a wedding. It's not even because you and your partner aren't on good terms or it's really about you're saving for a certain type of wedding. And I'm not dogging that at all, because we did that. But we also didn't really have any money. It wasn't because we wanted a certain type of wedding. We just wanted a wedding, period. And we needed time, to save for that. So if you can have a shorter engagement and, get married in college and have a wedding that you're okay with, and still live together and be married, then that's fine. Obviously, the question comes up of who's taking care of college. So our friend that Tim just mentioned, her parents were okay with her getting married at this age, maybe because her husband or husband-to-be was so much older and he took care of everything. They were fine finishing paying for school. But some people's parents don't feel that way, and they feel like, okay, you want to be grown and you want to get married in college, because college, it depends on how you do it. There are obviously a lot of people who are in college and they work full time and they, go to a cheaper school, and they're not really living the college life where like they're partying and, and hopefully none of you guys are doing that anyway, but, they're not being supported by their parents, that they're kind of paying their own
grown-ish
way. Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe you live at home, but you still like pay for your own car and you have a job and you're paying for school, all those different things. And somebody in that position may or may not be interested in getting married. It just really just depends. But if you are in kind of a more cushy college experience where your parents are paying for everything and you don't have any bills or responsibilities, and now you're saying you want to get married, your parents may not continue to support you based on that decision. It just all depends. If that's not your situation, then that's one less thing you have to be concerned about. But yeah, it all depends. Another way I read this question was like, okay, maybe they're the same age, but one of them's in college and one of them is not. kind of same rules applies. Like somebody has to be working, and you know, if you guys are both working and one's in school, then I don't think it really matters. Like if someone's going to school at night, but you're both working during the day, then you know you can definitely make that work. But it just all depends on what your preferences are. Are you going to move out of the dorm, you know, and live with your spouse? Like some people don't want to leave their college life, which, you know, maybe you wouldn't even be asking this question if that was the case.
Yeah. So next question: what does shared Bible study time look like for y'all as a couple?
You want me to answer it first?
Go ahead.
Okay, so we don't have shared Bible time, which is so funny because it's kind of like a presumptuous question, but I don't even think we've ever said that we've done that. So we each have our own individual relationships with God, and I read my Bible every morning. Tim reads his Bible every morning. We pray together every night, like very quickly before we go to bed. But and it's not that we don't ever seek God together, because that's definitely not true. We do, especially when we have big decisions. We actually fast together once a month as a family. No, our son does not fast from food yet, but everything we do, because he technically hasn't given his life to Christ. He's only 2.5, but we will make sure that our environment is one that is focused on the Holy Spirit once a month. And he participates in that at all. He loves to worship. He loves God's presence. He loves to pray. So, you know, he participates with us as well with something we call it Seek Week at our house. And then when we do have like really big decisions to make, or we need an answer from the Lord on something, you know, for our family or individually, we will have worship time together. And usually during Seek Week, we end Seek Week with a worship night, just me and Tim, because our son's usually asleep. So we do see God together, but we don't have a shared Bible time where it's like, okay, I'm like a Bible study or something like that. I'm not saying we never will. We've definitely done plans together and things like that, and talked things through, especially when we were dating.
I'll say there's absolutely nothing wrong, obviously, with having that shared Bible time. And when you get married, you'll realize you just got to figure out what works for you and your spouse. Like for us, because we are best friends and like we talk about everything, like we end up talking a lot about, you know, this is what the Lord's speaking to me, and this is what I got from this verse, or this is what I heard in this sermon. So we very much talk about the Bible and God all the time. Mm-hmm. It's just we're not necessarily sitting down reading Acts 5 together. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing that, but that's just not something that we've incorporated yet. But like Pauline laid out, like we very much are in our word together, talking about the word, seeking God as a family.
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on what your life looks like. Like we're very fortunate that we get to spend a lot of time together, and like you said, you know, I'm not gonna say it's not necessary. I think if we were to do it right now, we'd be out of religion, if I'm being honest. But for couples who maybe they both work outside the home and they don't see each other as much as maybe we do or another couple, then they need that intentional Bible time or that shared Bible study together, or else they would never talk about, you know, what they're learning and what God is saying, and different things that are going on. So yeah, you need to, at the end of the day, you need to be connected to your partner's heart. And this, you know, we're specifically talking about in marriage. When you're dating, it makes more sense because you don't live together, you don't have as much concentrated time together. So I understand if you want to do a Bible plan together and talk about, hey, what did you think about this or that verse, or what did you think about the sermon, or whatever, things like that. Like I understand that more when you're in a dating situation. Yeah,
let's go. Last question.
How to make intentional and cultivate.
It's not worded very well. They're trying to ask, how do you have deep friendships in adulthood? That's essentially what they're asking. And this is something that I think every adult struggles with at some point. It's like how do you make friends? You're busy. They're busy.
You're tired.
You're tired. They're tired. You got kids. They got kids. You may not got kids. They may not got kids. Like, it's just a lot going on. And I don't know if there's one size fits all answer. I think the first viral post in quotes that we've ever had was about adult friendships, and it was simply said adult friendships require grace. And I don't think you can successfully have adult friendships without grace, because there's going to be times where they may drop the ball. There's going to be times where you wanted them to show up and they weren't able to show up for whatever reason. There's going to be times where you wanted them to call and they couldn't call for whatever reason. There's going to be times where you wanted to hang out and they couldn't hang out. And you got to have grace. It can't be like, man, forget them because they can't do this or can't do that. It's understanding, you know what? I'm busy too. I have things I got to go on too. I can't always make it everywhere too.
Yeah.
And when you have grace for them, you're able to help the relationship stay healthy. Now, that doesn't mean let people run all over you. That doesn't mean that they don't never show up for you. That doesn't mean they never call you. That doesn't mean they never text you. Like, there does need to be some clear signs that the relationship is mutual for it to be healthy. But you do need that grace piece. Also, I've heard if you're always open to new friendships, you'll always have friends, because life happens. Like, we have some really close friends. We're still close with them, but they moved to Ohio, so they're no longer like in the same proximity as us, and that changes things. And I think you just have to be okay with being open to making new relationships, because you just never know what life's gonna do and where people in your life currently are going to be in the future. Yeah,
so good. I'd also just add being friendly. I mean, the Bible says in order to be a friend, to get a friend, you have to be a friend. And that does require being gracious, just like you said. But I also think it means, making sure that you are generous and that you are giving what you want to receive, even when, and especially when you're not receiving it. And I agree wholeheartedly with what you said about open, like always being open to friends, because if you're just kind of like, I have my friends from college or high school or from wherever, like, it's not really a healthy thing. It's not always growth mindset. Like, of course, you never cut anybody off and you always treat people well. But life takes just so many different turns and twists. Like, everyone's not going to get married the same year. Everyone's not going to have kids the same year. And those two things dramatically change your life and your friendships, as they should. Those are transformative things that you're going through as an adult. And some people will respond different ways, and you'll respond different ways to people doing that as well. You really need to be open to what God is doing. And sometimes things are like a revolving door, and I don't mean that in a negative way. Sometimes people go out your life forever. Sometimes they come back. But you always want to leave people better than how you found them. So even if you have the same friends for the past 15 years, that's great. And keep loving them. And, as long as they're in your life, keep loving them. But also be open to new friends as well, because you never know. Like, until you're lonely and you don't have any friends, you don't know what it's like to be kind of like ousted. So you want to make sure that you're always if you do have a good set of friends right now, you always want to make sure that you guys are open to welcoming people into what you have going on as well, because one day you could very well be in that position and you wish somebody would be as gracious and open to you. But I think that you have to, especially as a mom, this has been like a big thing on my mind. It's like really prioritizing what's most important. So is it most important that I have other mom friends? Is it most important that I have like easy friendships, people who already know me, who I don't have to put the work in? But reality is I've changed a lot and I am changing. So kind of coasting in old friendships is not always the best thing to do. But you have to put yourself out there and be vulnerable to make friends, because everybody, and I was just talking about this with a bunch of ladies at a girls' dinner a few weeks ago, but like everybody still feels like we're in middle school. Like, it's like this kind of insecurity of like, I don't want to do too much. Like, will they like me? That, like, everybody still has that. So one thing that's been helpful for me, and I don't always do it, but walking into every room assuming that everybody loves me already, because sometimes the enemy will use that, like, don't be too much, don't say too much, and then you end up just honestly shrinking back in a room, and then everyone's like, what's wrong with her? Like, she was there, but I didn't get to know her, and she seems standoffish, and that just kind of deters any further, potential friendship of budding at all in the future. So you have to be committed to the process as well. That's the other thing I'll say. If you want to have intentional deep friendships, all deep friendships start out as shallow friendships. So you have to be willing to do the work and do the digging and commit to the process. This is not, kindergarten, and it is not first day of college where everybody's like, boom, we're instant best friends because we're all just so excited to be here. Like you said, everybody has a lot of resistance and a lot of defenses, like a lot of, I'm busy, I'm tired, I have a lot of things on my mind, I want to be social and be out here, but to be honest, I should be at the gym because I have a doctor's appointment and I got to schedule this. Everyone thinks like that. So you have to be willing for it to be shallow before it becomes deep, and you have to let it be natural before it becomes intentional. So what I mean by natural before intentional is look at who's already around you. We kind of talked about this earlier with the where do you look for a partner. So like wherever you are now, God has put people in your life, but a lot of times we just don't go deeper to what he's already given us. So like you may click very chill with somebody at work or somebody at the gym, and I really like her outfit, or he looks like he knows what he's doing. Maybe I could ask him for some tips on how to do bench presses or whatever. And that starts out pretty shallow, but you keep being consistent with that, and you can be intentional with the shallow conversations. And the next thing you know, you guys are going to get coffee, you're going to get smoothies after the gym, and you can have more conversations about, well, hey, how did you grow up? Those types of things. I think sometimes we don't want to do the work. We just off buck want a best friend, and that's not how people work.
Yeah. Absolutely not. So we hope you enjoyed this rapid fire Q&A. We talked about a lot of different things, from sex to friendships to just how do you find somebody to date in this time of life. So we'll see y'all next week on the W Podcast.
Bye.
Thanks for watching this video.
To get more Christian relationship advice, subscribe to our channel.
And make sure you check out our other videos as well.